What is happening out there, Roto Scouts basketball fans? What's going on, gang? Tuesday afternoon, a little bit after 4 o'clock, getting started. Really solid looking slate tonight, 10 gamer. Should be an interesting one. Total chaos. A lot of known unknowns, a lot of, I'm sure, unknown unknowns coming at us. Couple things that were important dominoes have already fallen into place. Stephen Leibowitz being tempted to play Andrew Wiggins tonight. Not really my top of the board, but we'll take a look. Wiggins just hasn't really been performing like the player we've seen over the last couple of years. So going to be a tough one, but obviously a glut of minutes there and some usage to go around there with no Steph Curry. That was one of the big dominoes that came down. We'll talk about that one. Matthew Patterson's here looking for the Siakam of the day. Yeah, that one connected nicely. Outside of Dennis Schroeder going completely bust in like way too many of my lineups, it was a really solid night. Still had a profitable night of NBA. But could have been a lot better if Mr. Schroeder didn't put up what did he finish with? Like 12, 13 on FanDuel? Wasn't great. Travis is here. Travis 150 feet up in the air at the top of the crane, looking down on the world from above. All feels right in the world. Yeah, and Joker and I are doing well. He just jumped over here to say hi. Yeah, Steven, totally got where you're coming from on that one. Don't get me wrong. Trey's here. What's going on, Trey? Trey can get a slate in. No class today. Nice. Hope class is going well. Gilbert Powell says, I think Wiggins' shoulder is hurt. Okay. Wasn't aware of the injury. Take your word for it for sure. Mamba's here. What's going on, Mamba? Cujo Blue. Joker play of the day, Sutton. Joker's play of the day could be Joker today. It's looking pretty solid at the top of the board. Double-digit win rates for Joker at the top of the board for 12-2 on DraftKings. A little bit less so on FanDuel. Big differences across the board. Top of the board's top salary guys on DraftKings and FanDuel today. Looks like we get a little bit probably more Starsy Scrubsy on DraftKings. Not an uncommon theme lately. We'll get into looking at some of the percentages. Looks like we've got a little bit of a quorum here, so we can get started. It's a big slate, so there'll be a lot to talk about, of course. Let's just fire this thing up. We get started looking at it. A lot of pretty interesting games. We've got as of the last update I ran, Pacers and Sixers to start things off, 240.5 point total. Philly favored by 5, but I mean a reasonably close spread between two teams that can definitely put some fantasy points on the board. So that one's really interesting. A couple of 220s, Miami, Charlotte, 222.5. Atlanta, Detroit, 225.5. Orlando, Brooklyn down to 217.5. That one's a little bit ugly for fantasy scoring or for like raw scoring potential, but there's some plays in those games. Then we jump back up. We've got 238.5 points on the board between San Antonio and OKC. Lot of different directions those ones could go. 10.5 point spread with OKC favored in that one. Dallas and New Orleans on the board for 239.5. Dallas favored by 4. 231.5 between Portland and Utah is another interesting target. And then two games in the later part of the slate. The Clippers at Denver and the Grizzlies at the Lakers, both 225 point totals. The game between Minnesota and Golden State is down to 217 without Steph Curry. That one came down by a handful of points when Steph went out and the line swung by 4 points. Golden State was favored by like 2.5, and now it's a 2.5 point Minnesota favored. But it's a really deep slate in terms of targeting game environments. There's a lot of really good pace up spots, a lot of good environments here. So I like the slate. I like the way that we're breaking down here. Yeah, for sure, Trav. 240 is a big total. Absolutely. We've basically, if we're looking at 240.5, 238.5, and 239.5 is basically the same thing. We've got 3 of them. So I like all 3 of those spots. And, of course, we'll have all kinds of chaos because we've got a long list of guys who may or may not be playing. questionable as of the last update that I did. Oh, wait, Gary Harris is out, so I can cross him off. Gary Harris, the most recent guy to be announced, is not playing. But as far as I know, still questionable. The big ticket items, Joel Embiid, LeBron James. Who else do I have? Those are the two biggest names. Then Herb Jones has an impact. Brendan Miller has an impact. Jeremy Sohan has an impact. Xavier Tillman. Those guys are all questionable. Already confirmed out this morning was Trae Young. This afternoon, Steph Curry. And then just a long list of guys who have been out or were ruled out over the last 24 hours. Keldon Johnson was ruled out this afternoon. So was Trae Jones. That was a big impact of the Spurs. Jalen Duren's out. Kelly Oubre's out, obviously, after getting hit by a car. That was a weird one. Tyler Hero, Caleb Martin, Terry Rozier, Markelle Fultz, Ben Simmons, Cam Thomas. All this is up on the website, by the way. Scoot Henderson and Malcolm Brogdon. CJ McCollum out. CJ out from New Orleans. Scoot and Malcolm Brogdon out from Portland. There's a ton of minutes at the top of that Portland rotation right now. I've got their top two guys at 38 minutes. Some other places have them at 39 minutes. A lot of action going on there. Walker Kessler out. Jamal Murray out. Probables. Big two are, the big one is Anthony Davis. Seems like he's going to play. John Collins also probable. And then Lonnie Walker and Kevin Love both went from probable to available. A lot less important guys there. But a lot of moving parts still on this slate. And a lot of things will probably be confirmed. 4:30 update, more like the 5:30 update. Mama says the Joker barks every time I'm back and forth on a play. Who Travis, what's up, my guy? Sorry at the top the other day with me and I thought you were going to take it home. Bad beat. Oh, did you take one down, Mama? For what? What was that on the football slate with the Sutton play? Congrats for whatever you got. Also, can't forget for putting on Jaylen Brown over Tatum. Couldn't get that point guard spot right. It would have been a better night yesterday. Yeah, I just had so many shares that just went to Dennis Schroeder that just got completely burnt. I'm talking about 100 plus shares out of 150. I had a big chunk of Dennis Schroeder. Like we talked about on the show yesterday, that Toronto rotation was going to let us down. Those top guys were going to let us down. One of them was not going to come through. And it was a matter of landing on a lineup that had the right combination of Toronto guys. And it really went that way. I had him in the right order. I just didn't think that a bad game from Dennis Schroeder would get that bad. That was disappointing. Mitchell and Garland got Steven Leibowitz. Yeah, I had more Garland than I would have wanted. Mitchell I didn't have as much of, but I had a few good lineups that when I checked it was him dragging ass a little bit in those lineups. That was like, I thought I had some minutes left in that one, but it doesn't seem to be catching up. 1,000-man split. Okay, hey, still, takedown is a takedown. It's been more difficult this year to get those unique showdown winners, I feel. My showdown pool ended up a little screwy. I had Traquan Smith still in the projections late. I double checked all the inactives, but I forgot to double check whether he had been called up from the practice squad. So he landed in some of mine through the Sims and just kind of screwed up my pool a little bit. I had some contenders, but nothing great in that one. Yeah, that was a weird game too. Did you see the dude, somebody in Florida, apparently bet $1 million, alt first half line, Bills -1, and then another $1 million, alt first half line, Bills -4.5. So he lost on both of them. I can't imagine $1 million on a first half bet. I can't imagine betting $1 million on anything, but on a first half bet to win couldn't have been that much. Anyway. Some interesting stuff on this board. Obviously, a lot of big names. Big slate. 20 teams to choose from. Going to be a lot of stars. Going to be a lot of 40s projections, 30s projections. So the board looks a little bit different. Fair amount of spread. But let's get sorted by some of the winners here. And that gets ugly immediately. We got a bunch of stupid juniors and whatnot. I thought I fixed these, though. Hold on. Oh, that's going to be annoying. I can do this. Some of these are still not going to be here, but I'm going to fix this later. So I forgot I didn't use the right name template here. So these lookups are going to be a little messy for the moment. So I got to change those back. I went and I changed them to the DraftKings format, forgetting that I needed it in the other one. This is the most critical one. There's a senior in there. Second. Third. Fourth. There's 2 fourths on this slate. 8 fourths on. Oh, no, wait. That just killed a few guys whose names just have the letters I and V in it. Oh, what is it? It's Lonnie and somebody down bottom. I don't think the other guy's important. Joker, what are you doing, dude? Would you just knock over in there? Can you lie down? Hit the like and subscribe for Joker knocking shit over in the other room, for the welcome to me fixing stuff in the spreadsheet show. It's a fun start. Let me get PJ Washington fixed here. Let me get Marvin Bagley fixed. And we'll be all set. Isn't he PJ Washington like that? Oh, he's initials on this one. So annoying. Can't wait to go find out what he knocked over in the other room. Can't imagine what it was. There's like nothing there for him to knock over. He's not clumsy either, so he did that on purpose. Yeah, it's Bagley got all screwy. Now, Derek Lively just doesn't come up for whatever reason. All right, this is good enough for government work. I don't think anybody, Dwight Powell's not critical, so don't worry about anybody in there. Figure it out as we go. And none of these non-projected guys matter. Hey, all right, we got a functional board. Welcome to the stuff you should have done immediately before the show started. Like formatting this. Why is this all screwy? Like, why would every other one be in a different font size? So dumb. All right. Can we actually look at this now? Yeah, Trey nailed it. Messing with me purposely because he knows I'm doing a show. Exactly. Let me know if you need any ownership. It's yeah. I mean, if anything, important shifts, feel free to throw it at me, or anything that you think is interesting. Feel free to throw it at me. I did upload the most recent stuff. We're simmed against the most recent ownership updates from the source that I use, but there's always discrepancies between that site and the primary one that a lot of us used to use or still do use. So yeah, feel free to drop in any thoughts about ownership or whatever. Some interesting discrepancies at the top of this board, I'll tell you that. Bogdan, not at all looking relevant on the FanDuel slate, but a massive part of the DraftKings slate at 4,900. Great projection on him, 5.49 points per dollar, but just not really landing on FanDuel at small forward or shooting guard. The price is fine. The points per dollar is good. He's a good player who should be stepping into a little bit more work. He's been like the primary first off the bench for them and taking over as a direct backup for Trey in those situations with Deontay also out there. But now with Trey out, it seems like he's going to just step into a bunch of minutes. There should be some usage there for him. 4,900 on the DraftKings slate is a great price, and he is obviously a critical component of that slate. 6.63 points per dollar for 4,900 is immense. 6.46, different kind of a play. Lower ceiling on Rocco here. don't love the idea of having to have him involved. 24 minutes, 3,900. He's played 15 minutes the last time out. Gave us 11 fantasy points. He's putting up 0.92 fantasy points per minute on FanDuel, 0.8 on the DraftKings scoring system. Nobody's favorite. A big disappointment. A pretty often in fantasy. We're down to... Oh, that one's the 240.5 point total. Let me take a look at the points per minute that we've got him at. Yeah, he's putting up... What did I say for the season? 0.92 on the season. I've got him right around that mark. Just price-driven options on that DraftKings slate. 3,400 over there. He's only 3,900 on FanDuel, and he's coming up relevant over there as well. Power forward and small forward. Not a lot of love on Michael Porter, Sadiq Bey here, but plenty of upside for them on the DraftKings slate at 6,700, 4,300. A lot of these low-cost value guys hitting the board on this on the DraftKings slate. Like I said, it looked a little bit more starsy, scrubsy if we just go to the top overall salary guys. Let's just say everybody over 9K. Right, like these guys being this relevant, that's a fair amount of appearances for the highest salary guys on the entire slate in the winning lineups, and especially when that many of them come at the same position. You can also see kind of where the spend is on the DraftKings slate in a lot of cases. Your center spots, what's that up to? 41% of your winning center spots are right there on DraftKings. A little bit different on FanDuel. A little bit more of a spread. But just interesting for slate construction, and that's why you end up seeing so many of the 34s, the 49s, the 47s, the 37s, the 46s. So many of these guys bounce to the top in Sims because they just become critical building blocks like we've talked about. Even with low projections, just doesn't matter after a point. Yeah, Q-tags on Embiid, Hayward, Collins, Davis, and LeBron. Collins, I believe, is, last I saw anyway, is more probable and questionable. But yeah, Q-tags on all those guys. LeBron is leaning more toward doubtful. That's not great. Yeah, Doo-Wop Reef. We've got him in. Bogdan familiar with the building too. Payback versus the Pistons. I mean, look, there's... It's not a thing that I dismiss offhand like I do with a lot of other sports. Like if you tell me like, oh, you know, this hitter used to play for this team and now he's going to want to hit 2 home runs today, like good luck. That's great. Good luck. Good luck trying to quantify it, anything like that. In basketball, especially with a guy who can have the ball in his hands quite a bit, like Bogdan, there is a little something to that. It's just very difficult to actually nail down if there is that motivation for one, unless a guy directly comes out and says it like we have had in the past, or it's just clear that a guy, all right, this guy takes 25% more shots when he plays his old team every time. Unless there's something to quantify like that, I still don't really like to put my finger on anything like that. But in basketball, there is more of a, you can kind of at least consider narratives like that for like as a tiebreaker, right? You're not going to project it based on that. But if you get down to, I've got 4,900 on DraftKings and Bogdan's great and he lands in 60% of the winning lineups anyway, or I could spend it on $4,700 DeAndre Hunter from the same team. That's not a great comp. Who else is on this board? $4,600 Alec Burks in 22 minutes with a lower upside for 13%. So it's clear cut based on the Sims anyway. But if you had to have some kind of a tiebreaker between Bogdan and like a better comparison, because there's not really one available at this position, call it in the util spot or whatever, then sure, you can say, all right, maybe Bogdan with the ball in his hands with more minutes anyway is going to have even more of a kick to him than is even projected. So that would be the only way to do it, but it's really not something you try and quantify. Trey likes Aja Thompson on Detroit. Yeah, I get he projects out really well for me. I don't know where he is on the sorted by DraftKings results board here, but he has a really good raw projection. $38 FanDuel points, 38 DraftKings points. Just in the top lineups a single-digit amount of the time on DraftKings, but a significant part of the FanDuel slate. 25% of the winning lineups, 7,400 at shooting guard, small forward on the FanDuel slate. Yeah, like Thompson a lot. 1.14 FanDuel points per minute so far. 32 minutes last time out, put up 34 FanDuel points. Playing 31 minutes a night over the team's first 11. I like the option. Multi-position eligible too. Gives him a little bit of flexibility. So we can get into some of the positions. Let's take a look at the guards. I'm really curious about how this, I mean, it's a much higher salary, even against the FanDuel cap. It must be something to do, though, with some of the relative value position-wise. Like, let's just look at who comes up the most on the FanDuel slate at these positions, because that matters why he's not coming up as much. So you get Shaedon Sharpe as a significant option here. He's 7,900. That's a critical difference. So Shaedon coming up for 6,800 on the FanDuel slate, small forward shooting guard, soaks up a lot of those shares that go to Bogdan on the other side, because on DraftKings, he's 7,900 and lands in at just 12% of the time. So that's a big piece of it. Kente George soaks up a big chunk of it as well, and he's shooting guard on FanDuel for 46. He's $5,300 at point guard on DraftKings, so that's a critical difference. Looks like Kyrie's getting a decent chunk of it. I'm surprised by that. I guess that's a really good price for Kyrie. 1.26 FanDuel points per minute on the season. Put up 54.7 in just 29 minutes the other day. Yeah, thinking about it now, that's a really good price, 8,600. And he's cheap on the DraftKings slate at 8,700 too. Comes up 20% of the time over there. But looks like another guy who's taking a big chunk of it away from Bogdan from site to site. Cade looks really strong. So a lot of really strong options at the guard position from a few reasonable mid-type guys in Kyrie and Cade. A couple really strong value plays. It's interesting how it goes very different site to site, though, at this position. So if you're on DraftKings, you're probably going to want to be significantly invested in Bogdan. That's just good chalk the way it looks right now. If another value play pops up at the same positioning for cheaper, somebody comes and crashes the party at 3,900 at the same shooting guard small forward positioning, you'll see that change. But right now, he's looking like a tremendous piece of value and a very good piece of chalk. 1.02 DraftKings points per minute on the season. Jalen Suggs, plenty to do in that Orlando rotation. I just took the Gary Harris minutes and just kind of spread them out for right now. But plenty of upside there for Suggs. I don't love that game environment in general, though. That was the low total. They're 217.5. That's the second lowest total on the board. 217 between Minnesota and Golden State now is the actual low. But just with so many healthy game environments on the board, it's not overly appealing to go here. But that said, these have been pretty decent sources of fantasy production. Give him 31 against last time out he played 38. He's averaged 31 over his last three. So I think the minutes are in line. The production's pretty much in line. 1.02 FanDuel points per minute, 0.99 DraftKings points per minute so far on the season. Definitely a very playable piece on both sites. Clarkson, more so on DraftKings for 65 point guard shooting guard than 69 on FanDuel. Chris Paul, despite an uptick in minutes to 33, started the day with him projected around, excuse me, I have cat hair in my eyes. Started him projected the day around like 25 on the FanDuel site, but then when Curry scratched, I moved some minutes over in his direction. I've seen him higher, I've seen him lower around town, so may shave a minute, may give him another one. But right now, it doesn't really look relevant on FanDuel. DraftKings, different story, 6,100 on the same price. But against the DraftKings cap and with the DraftKings positioning, it works out to 19% of the time in winners, 17% of the time in top ones. 0.97 DraftKings points per minute on the season, but with more to do for sure. You could definitely see a good game out of Chris Paul here. So I'm not uncomfortable making the play. It's just there are a lot of names. There's a lot of different ways you could go. So if he got overly popular, that's one that I could easily see maybe pivoting away from. There's no difference between him there and one of these guys for similar. Well, obviously not the $3,700 guy, but guys with similar sim results and similar pricing. There's no real difference. So that I would consider that pivot. But as long as he's not crazy popular, it's perfectly fine. And again, this is done against ownership. So this is even at ownership, he's coming up as a significant piece. DeJounte Murray, I give him an extra minute and a little bit more usage, but not really cracking through on FanDuel. He's perfectly fine. He's playable. 5.16 FanDuel points per minute or per dollar, 1.11 per minute on the season. Got him projected around that neighborhood. 1.14 DraftKings points per minute at 8,300 point guard, shooting guard has him more relevant. Roughly 19% of the time in winners, right around the same as Kyrie, right around the same as Chris Paul for 6,100. Kyrie's the most relevant on both sites out of these starish kind of guys in this group. It's just really price driven, but 1.26 FanDuel points per minute is really, really strong. 1.27 on DraftKings. Maxi's going to absolutely crush tonight, Jake Swales. I like Maxi. I like Maxi just in general. He put up 70-something the other day. There it is, 72.9. That's always a pretty solid score. Could we play Bogdan and Murray together? Yeah, I think they're going to be out there plenty together. So I don't really see an issue with that. I don't think they're going to really cannibalize one another's minutes. What are the better point guard spends ups if you want to flip the build on DK? So, probably Kyrie looks really solid here for 87. 61 isn't exactly a spend up for Chris Paul, but he does look solid, and that's more, mid-rangey. This 10-3 on Shea is always fine. SGA for that price. When he's this expensive and he's landing in these optimals this many times, that's a totally justifiable spend up. A little bit less so around 10-2 for Tyrese, 11-8 for Luka. But either one of those guys, just in a raw scoring sense, is perfectly fine to go to. They land in top lineups a little bit, 5% of the time in the Sims. But any given slate, one of those guys can obviously put up a 60, a 70 that bends the slate at the position. But yeah, if you're going just pure best in a spend up sense, I think SGA, Kyrie are probably your top two. DeJounte Murray definitely qualifies for that on DraftKings as well, 8,300. And then the next tier down, I think Chris Paul makes a lot of sense. And Jordan Clarkson's on that list. Clarkson 22% of the time in top ones on DraftKings, 21% on FanDuel, or 21% in winners, 0.93 DraftKings points per minute for 6,500. He's 6,900 on FanDuel, a little bit less relevant, just 4.75 points per dollar. Just not the right price, it doesn't seem like, for what he's been, 0.88 FanDuel points per minute. Did have an okay game, 35 minutes the last time out, 36 minutes, 42.8 FanDuel points. So he was well above this the last time out and has been a better performer over time. But right now, I don't love that spot. Check what's going on in chat. A lot of chatter today. Love it. Feel free to answer one another's questions too if I miss them. And you guys have great thoughts on these things as well. And helps me out. Got 4 Hawks on DK. A little nervous about that. Yeah, never love seeing 4 from the same team. I do try and limit it to 3, especially on bigger slates. I think 3 feels a little bit more comfy. Before, you can definitely get there. And when it's key building block type guys, I don't even think you necessarily want to count Bogdan on DraftKings today in that. Like, I would say he's just a free square. And then 3 guys on top of him is probably okay. It's not my favorite build. I don't love seeing 4 logos from the same team pop up in optimizers either. But you could probably get away with it. Ricky Lee saying, going back to above doesn't DeJounte Murray, I assume, on FanDuel seem over-owned. I think it will be a good chalk, but not good enough to reach that absolute ceiling. So we don't have ownership on the screen here, but these sim results are against the ownership. So on FanDuel, I don't necessarily love it. He's another guy. It's just another one of those plays where he's correctly priced. His role changes, but not excessively. So I think the impact is less to him. He gained a few points, don't get me wrong, but it still doesn't vault him into even double digits in the sim results on FanDuel. 5.16 points per dollar is perfectly fine, but we do have a lot of guys that look in that territory today on this big slate at this position. So from a raw scoring perspective, from a ceiling perspective, there's definitely potential there. I'd say more as a later man in than like a first man in, not necessarily as big as like a building block on FanDuel. Perfectly playable and fine to go to 8% of the time in winners. I mean, that's not something to scratch off by any means. So it's point guard spends ups. Center value we'll get to, Metal Alley. Steven Leibowitz is on Roko for value. That one, it just makes me so uncomfortable. It's another guy that you just lose with so many times. I mean, how many times have we lost with Roko over the years? But yeah, it's showing through in sims. I'm not saying don't play it. I'm not saying I'm not going to play it. Just not one of the happy fuzzy kind of ones. Looking down the board, Shaden Sharp again, very, very different across sites. One of those guys just picking up a ton of minutes, 38 minutes at the top of the board on the at the top of that Portland rotation right now. Playing 39.5 a night over their first 9 games. Played 42 plus the last time out. Just put up 21.6 FanDuel points, 0.8 FanDuel points per minute on the season, 0.84 DraftKings points, but he's more expensive over there. Doesn't land in top lineups nearly as frequently. BI at 8,000, not bad. 11% of the time in winners on FanDuel, same results on DraftKings. Another guy that you can always just plug in fairly confidently for his usual fantasy point per minute or a little bit above kind of upside. Don't mind that option. That's another low scoring game though, or no? Wait, let me get that straight. That is another high scoring game, 239.5. Yes, I could have just looked at the 2 teams involved, but I'm dumb. So yeah, I think that makes for a pretty good target. If you're getting saturated from that game environment, it's always good to get one of these stars, one of the spend up type guys from the game environment, of course. And there are some guys hitting the board from that one. Got Kyrie up here, obviously, as another spend up option from that game. I have no issues with taking 2 expensive guys from that game either. Both of those guys can perform and produce, and arguably would have to for that game to really connect. A lot of differences site to site, though. Like Sohan, if he goes just 2% of the time on FanDuel, not that relevant. 10% of the time, 11% of the time on DraftKings for 5,800 makes him a little bit more interesting. Malachi Branham also picking up some time there, 3,900. Lands in top DraftKings lineups 10% of the time. Not at all in the top lineups on FanDuel at the same projection, 4,400. Small forward and shooting guard over there versus shooting guard only for 39 on DraftKings. Just shows how critical these cheapo sub 4,000 guys are over there. Cade and Melton, a lot more relevant on FanDuel. Just 8% of the time in winners on DraftKings for 8,000 and 5,500 respectively. 7,800 and 5,200. Anytime you're getting guys like this that have 30-minute plus projections that come up cheaper on FanDuel, as long as they're any kind of capable in a per minute sense, they're going to hit the board pretty hard. Per minute sense. They're going to hit the board pretty hard on the FanDuel slate. Skylar Mays, 33 minutes. Can't help him from getting around 30 FanDuel points. 0.95 points per minute so far on the season on both sites. Doesn't look great, like not a priority. You could see it working out but he's not at a crazy good points per dollar number. He's not one of the strong values on the slate, just 4.42 FanDuel points per dollar, 4.64 DraftKings points per dollar. 36 FanDuel points in 32 minutes the last time out. That doesn't really get you there at these prices. If he was one of these cheapo $4,900 guys, it would be a totally different story. But at these prices, he's an also ran probably a little worse than your average option at that price. Devin Vassell not really showing much. 32 minutes, full run. Doug McDermott not really showing much with a little bit of an uptick to 22 minutes. He's 3,300, so he's got a little tiny sliver of value on DraftKings, but not really. It's not that realistic. There's really no ceiling there, and you do need a little bit of ceiling on a deep slate like this. Norm Powell looks similar to that, and there's probably a little bit more juice there for 4,200. 5.4 points per dollar. And then there's a lot of guys down board like, LaMelo down here, Klay Thompson, Paul George, Russ Westbrook. A lot of guys that are playable names but don't really hit the board very hard in sim results right now. Don't really have great points per dollar numbers. So just as raw plays, any one of them could be okay. Any one of them could land in a winning lineup. You're talking about guys with a 45-point FanDuel projection and a 40-point FanDuel projection for Paul George. But Sims-wise, they're just really not working out strongly on either side. Cole Anthony and Kyle Lowry, a little bit of love for them on FanDuel. Just kind of mid-board plays on the FanDuel slate. A couple more. Keep in mind, this is sorted by DraftKings, so everybody over here has been fairly irrelevant for the last couple of minutes. But there's some FanDuel guys that keep popping up. Jordan Hawkins, that's not making anybody comfortable. 0.71 FanDuel points per minute so far on the season. Just 13.4 in 27 minutes the last time out. Still landing in lineups 10, 11% of the time for 5,100 on the FanDuel slate at 32 with a 32-minute projection. I don't love that option. I might go in there and see if there's a justification to take a minute or two away from him to get even less of him. But he does look a little bit more relevant just on a points per dollar sense on FanDuel, but not great. Sub 5. I don't like that one came up that much. 51, there's a lot of guys. Kind of wonder why that one came up even 10% of the time. It's not a very strong points per dollar projection. Anyway. Not one to keep an eye on because it's probably not going to matter all that much in the long run. There's so many shares of guys that look a lot better. DraftKings a little bit more spread out after the Bogdan play. FanDuel a little bit more consolidated when you go just by those win rates around some of those top guys that look like. Let's get back to that. Come on. It's a simple column sort. Yeah, FanDuel is some pretty strong consolidation here where DraftKings had a lot of guys in the more mid-teens. Get back over here and do some forwards. Ricky Lee says, what's the thoughts about Charlotte value of Hayward Miller sits? Think they have eight and a half bodies active. Yeah, that's going to get ugly. I didn't really sat here and contemplated it too much. A lot of the times I just take these things as they happen. But let's see. Right now we've got $16 on McGowan's. We've got, that's going to be a lot of minutes to have to distribute. If they both sat, you're talking about like 60 minutes to distribute, which would just be bananas for value. Yeah, Maladon would have to pick up some. McGowan would have to pick up some. Bonight's not on the team anymore. LaMelo's already at 35. Who else is... Ish is with this team now. Just got him at 8 minutes now, but presumably more minutes would go his way, just healthy bodies wise. Yeah, this would be just a total mess. Let's get back to... This is how they look right now. And you're not getting anything on McGowan's with a 16-minute projection. You're not getting anything on Ish. But, I mean, if you got relegated to losing 33 minutes from here and 31 minutes there, that would get pretty ugly pretty fast. None of these guys looks great now. Like, nobody across the board on DraftKings. But, yeah, if these guys popped up with 35, 36 on the DraftKings slate especially, those would become points of value. Even if we're just saying double these projections. I don't know, the price goes to 32 minutes, but, you know, call it 15-ish points. Like, he would look like some of those other guys that have 15, 17-point projections, but they hit the Sims a decent amount of the time just because they're such cheap building blocks. So I think that's what you would get out of this Charlotte spot. And then you'd probably get a couple more minutes. Like, I'd probably push the LaMelo to, like, 37. So you get a little bit of a push for him. Maybe over double digits on the FanDuel slate. Probably not on DraftKings at 10-4. That's pretty expensive. But at 9-6, I could see LaMelo picking up some value on FanDuel. Back to the... Jody Grant's here, sneaking around at work listening today. I like to imagine she's like ducking behind cubicle walls and stuff, like in Office Space. Jody doing like the army crawl with his headphones in. Ricky's got Maladon at 28, McGowan at 27, still popping off. Yeah, again, if they're getting those kind of minutes at those cheapo prices, there's definitely going to be value. There's definitely going to be returns in the Sims. So just keep an eye out. We have any news as of the last little bit? Giannis, that's Wednesday. Ben Simmons out at least a week with some lower back nerve impingement. Is this it begins for Ben Simmons for this season? Whoops. Oh, I didn't realize I had YouTube still open. All of a sudden I heard myself saying the word nerve again. Give you guys a lot of credit for tuning in for these shows. I don't really like the sound of my voice. Raj is here. Raj is new to the channel. Thanks for all the info and help. Listening on my job with the headphones on. Love it. Excellent. Welcome, Raj. Glad you found us. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. New folks like Raj, so that you know when these shows go live. We're a little bit variable with our show times. We definitely have things, that pop up randomly. So subscribing is always a good idea so that you know when we're here. So getting into some of this, let's take a peek at the top of the forwards board. Gary Payton is probably, 3,700. He might have hit that DraftKings board. Let me fix his name. He's Gary Payton there, but he was, your forward, your guard. A lot of value in those guys. Rocco, 3,400 again, just at that cheap a price with a 24-minute projection at 0.80 DraftKings points per minute. He's hitting the board nearly 50% of the time just by virtue of being 3,400. If more of those values emerge, could he get soaked up into other spots and that creates an opportunity to roster some higher-end guys at these positions? It definitely could happen. But right now, he's looking like a critical piece of value on DraftKings and coming up a pretty significant amount of time on the FanDuel slate as well. 0.92 FanDuel points per minute so far, just playing 15.3 minutes a game so far in 9 games. Last time out, 15 minutes, 11 fantasy points. Give him the additional 9 minutes, maybe we get this to around 20 and, around this projection. I don't know what the ceiling looks like. And again, it's just one of those ones that I feel like has so obviously and glaringly let us down a number of different times over the years. We've also gotten there with him before, and that's not any reason to go away from him with the uptick in minutes, but it doesn't make me comfy. Mikey Porter looking like a little bit better of an option, or at least more encouraging of an option. 1.13 DraftKings points per minute so far this season. 6,700 at both forward positions, pulling into nearly 40% of winning lineups on DraftKings. $4,300 Sadiq Bey hits the board a lot harder on DK at both forward spots than he does for 48 at just the small forward on FanDuel. Jeremy Grant, another guy getting a ton of minutes at the top of the Portland rotation. 38 minutes right now. I've seen him projected at 40. He played 40 the last time out. 31.5. 31.5 FanDuel points. He's a 0.88 FanDuel points per minute player, 0.92 DraftKings points per minute player on the season. With all of that, he's landing in winning lineups on FanDuel 60% of the time. A lot less in DraftKings, but still really, really relevant, 22% of the time. But just a major piece of good chalk at 6,700 on FanDuel. Essentially unavoidable at these levels. I believe he's the highest projected ownership on FanDuel, or he and Shaden Sharp are. But it's good chalk. There's good reason to go there. Another team that's just incredibly shorthanded. Hunter not really showing as much value on FanDuel at 49. 4,700 on DraftKings, landing in a pretty good amount of lineups at both forward spots. 5.26 points per dollar over there. 4.97 on FanDuel. Cam Johnson, both sites, relevant on both, but a little bit more relevant on the FanDuel slate, landing in nearly 30% of winning lineups on FanDuel. 15, basically half that on DraftKings, power forward only over there for 54. For 53 with a 30-minute projection on FanDuel, he's landing in a good chunk of lineups. Another guy that's not the most comfy to roster in that spot, 34.7 minutes last time out, 19.7 FanDuel points, 0.72 points per minute on the season. Travis says, Terry's single-handedly responsible for the drop of production in workforces at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do what I can. Vic, sorry to hear about that, buddy. Glad you made it, but sorry to hear where you were. What's chalk? What to stay away from? And was Terry in chat? And I acknowledge you. I acknowledge you as well, Vic. So yeah, good chalk. Bogdan on DraftKings, definitely a piece of good chalk. Rocco is looking like pretty decent chalk. A lot of the guys that we just went through, the guys at the top of the Portland rotation, more so on FanDuel for both of them. Between the two of them, I mean, you're talking about like, a 90 plus there. Again, with DraftKings, it's more a gradual decline here. I think FanDuel's a little bit steeper, just with the 50% or the 40%er. I guess you've got that on DraftKings as well, though, at the top. Let's look at the difference. So yeah, both the Portland guys at the top of the board on FanDuel, then Rocco. Ajer Thompson, a lot more interesting on FanDuel, as I said. Actually, it's honestly, I think it's more gradual on the FanDuel slate now that I'm looking at it. So that's interesting. It's the opposite of what we saw with the guards. A little bit more gradual of a decline on the FanDuel slate. So probably some more options available across forward spots on FanDuel. Seems to be the case anyway. Like Zion. 8,000 for Zion. It's a pretty good price. 1.11 FanDuel points per minute on the season. 1.14 on DraftKings, coming up 9% of the time, 9.5% in winners over there. 23.2% on FanDuel. Another guy in that healthy game between Dallas and New Orleans as well. Timmy Hardaway showing a little bit of value in that one. Yet another guy I don't love getting in my lineups. We've all had our Timmy Hardaway clunkers, I'm sure, but 10% of winners on FanDuel, A little bit below that on DraftKings. A relevant piece of the puzzle, 28 minutes. Very strong game environment. Potential for a lot of scoring in that one. Aaron Gordon, no love on FanDuel, unfortunately. I like getting to my Aaron Gordon shares, but doesn't look like we're getting there at 7,600 on FanDuel unless something changes. Still a little bit of value on DraftKings, 6,800. 5.3 points per dollar. Lands in the top lineups 8% of the time. Not like a priority play, but an option if you get to that level and you're at 6,800. Or an option, honestly, to put into the rotation of, if you're paying. There's not really crazy pay-ups at the position, though. Who's 84? Ingram. That's a small forward, I guess. The most expensive. So, yeah, I think he's just strongly in the rotation. 85 for Zion, but he wasn't any better in terms of the results. Solid spot to either get value or go to the middle on DraftKings. What's the most expensive guy with forward eligibility? 98. LeBron. That makes sense. Just 2% of the time on in winners on DraftKings. Somebody mentioned LeBron a minute ago in the chat. Mamba says Sloppy Station has LeBron projected in with 5% ownership, 50 DK points. I got him at 48.9 DK points, 47.6 FanDuel points, but just landing in winners a little bit less than that. So 5% owned versus 3.5% of the time in winners. It's another guy, though. I mean, LeBron is easily on that list of you can just play LeBron if you've got 98 and you've built out your full lineup and you've got that remaining spot. He's the last man in and he's perfectly fine. He's got ceiling beyond 50 DraftKings points, obviously. If I had him at 50, he'd be coming up a little bit more, but you'd be dealing with like 6 or 7%, maybe, if that. Give it another point and a half. Crazy to think Jokic may need to go for 100 fantasy points to break the slate, but crazier part is that's only 7x, and he could do it with a 60 piece. I know we were getting there, but hearing you talk about this value so far is getting me fired up for Jokic. Yeah, I think you can get to Jokic shares for sure. Who else do we want to talk about? This is just looking. We're resorted by the most expensive guys on DraftKings at the forward position. So if you're just looking for spend there, I really think Zion and Ingram again are both the most relevant guys above 8,000 at the forward spot on DraftKings. Everybody else relatively low single digit returns. 5% of the time in winners for Cat. You can also get him at the center spot. I would suspect most of those probably come at the center spot. So just seems like the forward positions are a place to either grab some of the middle. Like you do get value at 7,500 around Jeremy Grant. You do get some at 6,700 around MPJ. And then further down the board, the big pieces of value. So far, it might be a little value-oriented on the DraftKings slate, where across town, a little bit more relevance for more of these high-price guys. Wemby, 10% of the time. He's power forward and center. Markkanen, 10% of the time. Jaren Jackson. All those guys are in the 8s. Jimmy Butler, 23% of the time. Zion, 23% of the time. Paolo, 7,900, 20% of the time. 7,400, 25% of the time for Roger Thompson. That's not even talking about the two guys from Portland here. Very different boards at the forward position from site to site. Very, very different. I got to get rid of some of this conditional formatting. I think that's why this thing takes so long to sort sometimes. But then all the pretty colors go away. Two guys at 6+ from value positions driving a lot of that percentage and a lot of the reasoning to go to more value plays on the DraftKings slate there. You've also got Julian Champagne here, hiding at the dead minimum, 3,000 on the DraftKings slate. Not a strong projection. No raw scoring potential there. 0.58 DraftKings points per minute so far this season. Got him at 18 minutes with the absences in that San Antonio rotation. He's 3,500 on the FanDuel slate. Didn't come up at all, although the naming might have gotten screwy. but I don't think he's all that relevant on FanDuel. But a lot more, 5.64 DraftKings points per dollar. Has him in winners 11% of the time. Again, just another one of those guys with a flat projection. And what's the ceiling? 21, 22 DraftKings points, maybe. It's just a building block play. But even at this, he's still getting a decent little return there. You can just see when we resort by points per dollar, you can see where a lot of the sim results at the position go on DraftKings. Interesting slate. Interesting cross-site slate as well. If you were wanting to take advantage of differences across sites and play both, this would be a really, really good night to do that. To have the full portfolio of everyone across multiple sites. That's something I've never done. Don't have the patience for. And I don't think there's enough great opportunities. But tonight looks like a very good one. Let's get back to our sort of by winners here. We'll go take a look at centers and we'll take a look at some winning lineups. And then we'll punch out and get some lineups built for this one. Hopefully not too much chaos. I'm going to try and keep everything orderly and updated and as quick as possible on the site. I'll do a full audit of everything right after the show. Get a full update up, probably along with the 5:30 injury report. Those things usually jibe together. And then I'll be, moment by moment, keeping everything in line as best as possible up through lock. But we do have a lot of moving parts on this slate. So I expect some pandemonium. I expect to tear everything down and rebuild it 2 or 3 times as we approach lock, which is always fun. Nothing like having everything done, being like, oh, I feel like I'm in a good spot. And then like last night, RJ Barrett scratched 10 minutes before lock. Not that RJ hasn't been banged up this year, but there had been no discussion about him potentially not playing. And that created a big mess, and it was very easy to project. It took me about a minute to update that because the Knicks are so straight line in their rotation. But it created all sorts of havoc in, I had a bunch of RJ Barrett. I had no Alec Burks. I had not that much quickly. Resorted it once it was projected. I ended up with a lot of Alec Burks. That one worked out fairly decently. By the way, did you guys see the play that Alec Burks made where he jumped? He was going to get called for an up and down, came down, bounced the ball off of whoever the hell that was. Caught it off the bounce, nailed the 3. It was a pretty slick play that was going around on Twitter. Who did he do that? Was that off of Drew? That he bounced the ball off of? Just slick. You've seen that. I've seen that a ton of times. Guy going out of bounds, throwing it off of another guy. I don't remember ever seeing a guy about to get called for traveling and throw it off of another guy and get it back and take the shot. I don't remember that. Wiggins on FanDuel at 44 for Ricky. %8 of winners. Just hasn't been great. 0.65 FanDuel points per minute so far on this season. 4.95 points per dollar. There's plenty of minutes there. There's plenty of opportunity for him to, return to form. What was he last year? I really got to get this reloaded into this spreadsheet. At least it's an easy one where he was on this team. Last year he was 0.91 across the board. Significantly better, obviously. It wouldn't shock me by any means to see Wiggins get there. It's not a bad price overall for what the ceiling probably is. But right now, just a little bit of, maybe a little bit of recency bias in that projection. Based on, or short sample, call it, not actual recency bias because I haven't put my finger on anything, but a little bit of maybe short returns bias in there, but hasn't been great this season. I think there's better spots the way they're looking. Yeah, Mom, I'm with you. And teams should get fined. I don't know, fining is the right answer. I don't know what the right answer necessarily is, but you would just think that in a league that is so tied in, and this goes for all the different leagues now, with all the different sponsorships and everything, and how tied in they are with these gambling organizations, and with FanDuel and DraftKings and all the things that we care about, you would think that there would really be a crackdown where they could provide some sort of certainty to the gambling community. And I think that's probably coming as they renegotiate deals and sponsorships and everything over the next few years, and as the space just grows and grows on the betting side and the player prop side especially. They're just not going to tolerate it anymore. So I expect there'll be a crackdown over the next few years. I don't know what the actual answer is. No, Beantown, I wouldn't expect Kevin Knox to be a part of really anything. He was re-signed to that team off the street. They had him last year, or was that 2 years ago? Whenever the last time it was. I've got him at, I just gave him the scraps. I've got him at 7 minutes for today. And I don't think there's any reason to go to him, even if we were, expecting all that many minutes. We've done the Kevin Knox thing before. 24 minutes the last time out. I'm giving them a little bit less than they are at some other places, but yeah, it's not really a spot for me. And I wouldn't expect him to be a big part of their plans. Not showing in literally zero FanDuel lineups. 0.1% of winners. I don't know how that would even be possible over on DraftKings. 6.18. His salary doesn't even come up because he's Kevin Knox the second over there, and I didn't put him in the naming table because I thought he was going to be out of the league and we were never going to see him again. Failed draft pick. Golf Drone nails it. Haven't played Knox since he was a Knick. Failed New York Knicks draft pick Kevin Knox. Still remember being kind of like, all right, super young, a lot of time to develop, and just never looked confident on a basketball court to me. One of the most timid seeming players I've ever seen on a basketball court. Don't know what it was, but yeah, just never connected for me. He's terrible, but I just noticed he played. Yeah, look, there are, they've been shorthanded a lot. So a little bit of minutes to go around, but I just don't see him landing even if he does pick up some minutes. It might just be a minute sponge in that rotation rather than being anything that we care about, at least right now. We'll keep an eye on it, obviously. If he's getting 24 minutes a night, then we'll know that we need to change that. It's just not something I expect. I think we know who Kevin Knox is. I think the Pistons are well aware. So I wouldn't expect it to continue. DeAndre Ayton looking like a nice piece on both sites. 7,000 on DraftKings, 75 on FanDuel. Solid 35-minute projection in the shorthanded Portland rotation. So far this season, 1.08 FanDuel points per minute, 1.04 on the DraftKings side, 5.67 points per dollar. He's just looking like a very strong option. 13% of the time for Joel Embiid, 11% of the time for Jokic. Two very, very high-priced items at the center spot, but we saw where all the value is. These are the guys that you're using that value to lever up and get to. So I think there's a ton of lineups that you can just go one or the other, Embiid or Jokic, just back and forth, combining them with the value plays. 77.7 from Jokic the last time out, 66.1 from Embiid. AD sitting right here, 62.6 in 41 minutes the last time out. If you get AD with no LeBron, there's an uptick there for AD. Any one of these three stars is very, very playable. Right now, AD's not quite keeping pace, but even where he is, he's not far off from the results that we're seeing from these other guys. Ayton's the outlier, given the points per dollar, given the much lower cost than those guys. If he does this and gives you that kind of a performance, that could change the day. So I would definitely make sure, depending on how you build, to have some Ayton shares in your portfolio there that are kind of built the other way. Those would be the ones where you're, kind of pivoting and maybe spending more at guard, maybe spending more at forward. Zion looks strong side to side. By the way, none of those three stars are coming up as strong on the FanDuel slate. Embiid, Jokic, and AD. They're relevant, but a little bit less so given the one bite at the apple, outside of AD anyway, given the value of DeAndre Ayton. Zion's a power forward only, so he doesn't matter to that. Collins is picking up a little bit because he's only 61 on the FanDuel slate. Not really showing as much value at 64 on DraftKings. Obviously, we need him to play, but he's expected to play. Where are those shares going at center? Kelly O getting a little bit. I don't love that. 24-minute projection. Seems like FanDuel's lining a little bit up to be some value through the center spot a little. Between Collins. But a lot of these guys are power forward and center, so it's a little bit difficult to tell. But among like the center only guys, everybody here I think is going to be. That was not the right way to do that. Among the center only guys on FanDuel, you can see it. It's not really. You got 9% going to Bam, 14% going to Ayton. Just limited 8% total going between Jokic and Embiid. So it just seems like a lot of it's getting spread through those power forward and center guys, which is interesting. A lot of time you can see it where it just directly aligns to like the center only guys are here. The power forward center guys are landing at power forward because the center guys like Jokic and Embiid are grabbing a bunch of those shares and forcing them into the power forward spot. Doesn't look like that's the case on the FanDuel slate today. I think we're still sorted by this, actually. Pretty clear shelf right there, too, on DraftKings. Like, after you get past those stars, 45 for Okongwu. I don't know if you even bother with that play. 7% of the time in winners, 22-minute projection. 22 points. It's fine. I mean, that's a definite hard turn off the slate. $9,000 for Bam on the DraftKings slate. Single digits relevance. Kings pick Bagley over Doncic and Knox over SGA, if my memory is correct. Yeesh. Jokic and Embiid together on DK. That's pricey. Not saying it's impossible. That's pricey. You get Rocco in there at 34 at the power forward spot then. You immediately have to jump over to some of those extreme low-cost guards. I think you can do it. It's not unjustifiable. Fun watching all those kids at Kentucky, says Mamba. Yeah, my Knicks kind of pivoted from a Kentucky theme more into a Villanova theme over the last 2 years. But we'll see what happens with the next couple, because they've still got that part of the administration there. But yeah, it was an interesting ride with some of those guys. That's again when Knox came into the league, I was like, all right, maybe they got a little something here. Maybe they'll develop the kid into something. And just from jump, a lot of times you see a guy come into the NBA in the first 2 games, it's like, all right, he's finding his way. The game hasn't slowed down, whatever. But it just never seemed to click for Knox, at least not in any game that I ever watched him play. Timid, bad decision-making, slow decision-making. Didn't look like the game ever really slowed down for him. Speaking of Marvin Bagley, 4.73 FanDuel points per dollar doesn't look very good. 5.15 DraftKings points per dollar for 5,000. A little bit better, 5% of the time in winners. But again, it's kind of a steep drop-off here on the DraftKings slate where you're kind of just going clear cut through those top options. And then you got a lot of 5%ers, low single-digit types. More relevance for these downboard options on FanDuel. Kelly O giving us 1.03 FanDuel points per minute so far this season. 22.6 in 20 minutes last time out. Got him at 24 right now. 4,500 is his points per dollar option. He's hitting the board a little bit. One of those power forward and center guys. So yeah, among those guys, you've got AD pulling 6%, 17 going to Collins, 23 going in Kelly O's direction. I got to see if that needs balancing between those two as well. Triple J drawing 11%, another 20% between Zach Collins and Wemby. Another 16 down here at PJ Washington for 6,000. A little bit more spread on FanDuel for sure at the in the front court. Or you could just go to the stars. Again, it's no issues, even at these high prices, even sub 5 points per dollar, even with lowish sim results. I do feel like you can just push some shares of star players on any given slate. Golf Drone says DK $4,700 utility best option. Let's put everybody back in play here, and then we'll sort by salary. Ignoring those guys at the thing there. Why would it not get to... Oh, I know why. Because I put 4,700. I'm using decimals. Oh, why is it Robert Covington? I just don't like that answer. He's going to go out and smash now after I've talked him down this whole time. For what it's worth, as of the last time I checked, by the way, I've got him at 4 minutes less than they have him over at RG. They had him projected for 28 minutes, which would have him, I don't even know where, in terms of the sims. I've got him again. Oh, God, I just don't like it. He's so popular. He's so just on track to bust. Nothing we can do about it. I don't have him in a spot where it's justifiable to have him a pretty good amount beyond his normal points per minute production. I don't. I've got him at fewer minutes than the competition, and he still looks that strong. I hate that answer. If you're looking for other non-Roco guys on DraftKings for 43, Sadiq Bey, not uninteresting at that util spot, 28 minutes. He's put up 0.78 DraftKings points per minute so far this season. He's landing in top lineups 30% of the time. At exactly 47, you've got Hunter in that same rotation. 46 for Alec Burks. You're down to 13% of the time already there. I don't love that. And we have 3,700. Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton. I don't love that either. 18 minutes. I don't think you need to go. Unless you needed that 1,000 for something critical, I don't think you should do that. So yeah, it's probably, unfortunately. Well, this also gets you a big chunk of money back. So good news. Make sure you're spending your 1,300 extra on something really good there and put that Robert Covington square to good use. Like, don't just book this into a $4,700 spot and then not spend that money on anything. I think everybody out there knows that, but hopefully that, hopefully that goes without saying, and all you guys know that. I'm pretty sure you guys all know. But there are people out there who don't know that. They just see good play, chalk, popular, whatever, plug it in. You want to be spending that money on another one of these good plays from further up the board. Obviously, that's why he comes up this much, because he buys you those other plays, not because he himself is any good at all. I think the ceiling is more realistic for Sadiq Bey. If you need ceiling out of the spot for whatever reason, not just value, then I think you go that direction. Probably the same is true for Hunter. Probably the same is true for Alec Burks in diminishing in a diminishing sense. Can't get away from it. Their Roko season's in effect. Ugh. Kill me. I think that's what we're dealing with. Let's jump over to the Ace Mind lineups, and then we got to punch out of here so I can get some stuff built. Start with DraftKings. Let me get the board loaded up here. And we do this and that and this and ta-da. Are they there? I said ta-da before I knew for sure they were there. I can zoom, but if I zoom, I'll forget that I zoomed later. I think you guys can just deal with a little bit of blurriness there. So, well, look how frequently Robert Covington's in some of these lineups. God damn it. A lot of Roko landing in the power forward spot. A lot of the value forwards coming up. Some Roko landing in center as well. A lot of Ayton here. You know, I'm not seeing a ton of is Joker or Embiid. AD's landing in these a little bit more. AD and Ayton are landing in these a little bit more than Joker and Embiid. There's a Joker. There's another one. Oh, there's Embiid. Oh, no, that's downboard. Yeah, that. I didn't realize it had dropped. So you got to go a fair amount down the board before you find your first Joel Embiid. That's an interesting one, though. It's got Ayton, Embiid, and SGA in it. With Bogdan, Hunter, Jonathan Isaac, kind of a wild card. Colin Sexton, a big wild card that we saw was getting a little bit of sim results. Julian Champagne, same thing. It's more Jokic. So if you go down the board a little bit in our top 150 lineups, you definitely find some Jokic and Embiid shares. Here's a little bit of a run of Embiid. Some Chris Paul with him. Do we have an Embiid and Jokic? Probably not in the top 150. Tell you what we do have a lot of is Embiid and Robert Covington. Definitely some Embiid and DeAndre's, though. Or DeAndre Ayton's. Jokic, I feel like we get to a little bit earlier as we go down the board here. Jokic, Roko, Bogdan, Cole Anthony, Tim Hardaway. I don't love that lineup. This one seems to have a little bit more of some of the things we talked about. Bogdan, MPJ, Roko, Shaden Sharp, Joker. But yeah, very top of the board is kind of interesting with how it's falling. You can see how critical Bogdan is and how critical Robert Covington is as things stand right now. We do have potential changes coming. Obviously, the Charlotte rotation is going to be critical. What happens with LeBron could be critical. That could shoot Anthony Davis into a fair amount more of these lineups, and he's already landing in a decent amount of these lineups. And we just got it. Gordon Hayward and Brandon Miller both out. So total pandemonium. Welcome to Value Central. That'll be fun. I'm going to have to go and get those things updated. But yeah, so we could just essentially scratch everything we talked about outside of when we talked about how a bunch of value would probably pop up if both those guys scratch and all of a sudden there were 60 more minutes to spread around in a very short Charlotte rotation. So we'll deal with that in a second. Let's look at what was on the FanDuel slate. So dumb. I knew that was going to fucking happen. Shaden Sharp hitting the board very significantly. I don't think that'll change all that much. As I tell you already. Kyrie hitting the board a fair amount of the time on FanDuel. He came up during the show. Alger Thompson hitting the board a fair amount on FanDuel. He came up during the show. KCP we didn't touch on, but he's here a little bit. A lot of Zion. Only a couple Kelly O's. Despite how he was looking, unless he's hiding over here. Yeah, there's some more Kelly O hiding over here. Getting to more, some Cat, some Jokic. We got Jokic earlier in results. Some DeAndre Ayton looks good on this slate as well. But it looks like we can get a little bit more access earlier to those stars in results, despite how they looked on the FanDuel slate. I think that's just kind of a product of what I said. At a certain point, last man in, you can just get Jokic in there and just take the raw scoring. And that's where some of these lineups come from. And again, bear in mind, this is one sim, so that lineup might not do as well if I reran that lineup against a fresh pool. It should. Not necessarily exactly as well. Might not even land top 150. But it should show positive returns. But yeah, all this is going to be very different in the next little bit. But I expect some of the bigger pieces of value will definitely still hold their shape. The guys who are getting all the minutes in Portland are going to hold their shape. Zion, DeAndre Ayton, Robert Covington will all be present no matter what happens here. If anything, you're just going to see even more stars and even more of a Starsy Scrubsy kind of a configuration with the emergence of that much value on FanDuel. And it just is a double down position for Star Scrubs on the DraftKings slate. Now you can do essentially whatever you want with all the $3,000 guys that are going to be hitting the board over there. Mama, now this now is FanDuel. JT Thor in starting for Hayward. Okay. Interesting. What does JT Thor cost? Thor is 3,700 power forward only on FanDuel, 4,200 power forward only on the DraftKings slate. 0.66-ish fantasy points per minute so far on the season. The good news is it's not a crazy great game environment there. But other than that, there's just going to be a ton of value in a points per dollar basis. Or just like a minutes per dollar basis, even if you wanted to boil it down to something like that. Gonna have to go get it all sorted out. It's gonna be a fun one. Sort by score, and I'm sure you'll see Joker more. Yeah, it's we're sorted by ROI here on this board, I believe is how it comes up initially. But you could do it by you know what? It's not on this one. In here, there's more columns if you do the download all lineups thing. Just show you. I gotta share this, so hold on one sec. So if you use that export tool, this is the entire thing. Right, so in here, there are 52,780 lineups and all their results from that sim. So it's the entire pool that it ran it against. And you can get your projection, you can get field projection, you can get the ceiling result from the entire sim. So it runs 52,000, whatever that I just said. It runs those 50 some odd thousand lineups. Oops. It runs them 50,000 times. So the ceiling results, I believe, are the highest score that it got to. There's a chance that it's just the ceilings calculated against the standard deviation. I got to ask the guys about that. But to your point, when sorted by ceiling, still a lot of Aytons and some John Collinses and some Jaren Jacksons. So actually, in one sense, for ceiling score anyway here, you're getting to less. But if you go by ROI, you're getting to, he's definitely in here. By ROI, he's in lineup 12, 29, 32, 115, 172. By ceiling, those didn't change columns because I'm a dumbass. Because if you sort it when they're... Hang on, I think that works, huh? I got to redo it this way, I think. Yeah, there you go. So by ceiling, he drops to 129, 181, 298, 369, and so on and so forth. And those aren't the same lineups. The highest ROI lineup you don't get to by ceiling until lineup 837. Or not the highest ROI lineup overall, although that might be with Jokic in it. Nope. That's the fourth highest with Jokic in it. The highest ROI lineup. Downward quite a bit. 1803, I think that was it. So not till 65, 66, if just sorting by ceiling. 439 point ceiling, 313 point projection, 316 point field projection, spends all the money. Highest ROI Jokic lineup on the slate. But by raw ceiling scoring, and I mean, you're talking about decimals between a lot of these in those results. That lineup, by the way, Jordan Clarkson, DeJounte Murray, Keontae George, Jordan Hawkins, Rocco, Shaedon Sharpe, Cam Johnson, PJ Washington, Nikola Jokic. But anyway, again, all this is going to completely change, and will probably change again 2 more times before lock. We're coming up on the 5:30 injury report. We've been doing this for about an hour and a half. You guys rock. There's still 30-ish people hanging out here. Hit the like and the subscribe for me. Helps me out, makes me feel good. I'm going to go get stuff updated, get it back up on the site, and we'll go from there. I'll be hanging around in Discord for any questions, anything like that. And otherwise, good luck. Somebody go win something, and I'll see you tomorrow. We'll do this all over again on Wednesday. Later, guys.